first of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy.
Right.
And I love this Make America Healthy Again.
I think he's a great guy.
I love the fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah.
And are you completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. Focus on health. Focus. Yeah. You can do whatever you want.
Putting RFK Jr. in charge of the nation's health would be like putting Dairy Queen in charge of the education department.
You're going to tell me that back in the Ice Age, how much taxes did people pay and how many changes did governments make to melt the ice?
Which is a terrifying but believable possibility of a second Trump term. But would you believe me if I told you that is the least crazy thing he said in that interview?
Some of these women, they're so stupid.
Believe me, folks, that is just the tip of the insanity iceberg. At one unbearably cringe moment I have for you towards the end, Trump awkwardly begs for Joe Rogan's endorsement. And I'd say you'd have to see it to believe it, but this, of course, is Trump the billionaire beggar we're talking about.
So whatever you can do to help financially would be fantastic, because we have to beat it. If it's $5 or $10 or $100, whatever you can do.
You want to know what the real danger of putting a lying, grifting lunatic on one of the world's biggest podcasts is? It's that you make stuff like this seem normal.
That election was so crooked. It was the most crooked election.
Okay, but give me some examples of how.
Well, we could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots, or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another one.
Are you going to present this ever?
I won by I lost by I didn't lose. But Russia would have never gone into Ukraine if I were president.
How would you have stopped it?
Automatic. Two things. I told him. I said, Vladimir, you're not going in.
Right, a totally normal foreign policy strategy. Whispering sweet nothings into Putin's ears to remind him of how you played hard to get on your first night together.
I said, Vladimir, you're not going in.
And in this interview that we'll break down and show you the most insane parts of, Rogan did just that. He platformed Trump's lunacy for nearly 3 hours, allowing Trump to court the show's young, male, right-leaning, and massive audience, consisting of 14.5 million followers on Spotify and 17.5 million YouTube subscribers to be exact. So, you know, a little bigger than your average Trump rally. And to any sane person with a prefrontal cortex and a high school diploma, this interview makes Trump look like the clown caked in orange makeup he actually is. But Rogan's misguided attempt at monetizing mania also dangerously normalized Trump's erratic behavior and humanized him despite his blatant insanity.
I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe.
You said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo.
Like, okay, sure, people are and have been sick of the routine, polished doublespeak of career politicians for a long time. But don't you think this is going a little too far in the other direction?
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it.
Right. I hate it when my presidential candidates' debate performances, economic policies, and immigration proposals sound rehearsed. I'd rather hear a half-baked concept that gets to the raw meat of it.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs.
Is that the smell of genius or roasted wiener dog? Seriously, I just got in from Haisha and I'm famished. But even after that sycophantic knob gobbling, Rogan at least tried to push back on Trump's election lies. But ultimately, I think he did much more harm than good. Take a look at this wild exchange and see if you agree.
So I want to talk about 2020 because you said over and over again that you were robbed in 2020.
Yeah, totally.
How do you think you were robbed? Everybody always cuts you off. I'm going to allow.
Well, they not only cut you off. Well, what I'd rather do is we'll do it another time, and I would bring in papers that you would not believe. So many different papers. That election was so crooked. It was the most crooked election.
Okay, but give me some examples of how.
Well, let's start on the top and the easy ones.
Okay.
They were supposed to get legislative approval to do the things they did, and they didn't get it. In many cases, they didn't get it.
What things?
Anything.
Legislative approval,
like
of...
for extensions of the voting, for voting earlier, for this,
Right.
for all different things. By law, they had to get legislative approvals. You don't have to go any further than that. We could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots, or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another one.
Are you going to present
let me,
ever? Like,
they didn't get approval for so many things. And, you know, Joe, I'd bring the papers for all the examples of all the things I'm referring to. But you see, Joe, the intelligence agencies, they took the ones I couldn't flush down the toilet at Mar-a-Lago, which brings me to the injustice system. And it just gets worse from there as Trump continues to do the weave on a dumbfounded Joe Rogan.
And, you know, I do the weave. You know what the weave is? I'll talk about like 9 different things, and they all come back brilliantly together.
Leading to this insane, if seemingly benign and hilarious moment.
51 intelligence agents come up that the laptop was from Russia. It turned out to be totally false.
51 former intelligence agents, right?
They say that made, I don't believe it's this much, but it doesn't have to. I lost by I didn't lose, but they say I lost, Joe, they say I lost by 22,000 votes. That's like 1/10 of 1%, less than that.
And look, that is objectively kind of funny, but only because it's so ridiculous. What Joe is doing there by letting him go on an unfettered tirade and then laughing is signaling to his highly impressionable audience that this is normal. That everything Trump just argued without evidence has legitimacy to it, and that the fact that he illegally tried to overthrow the government and the will of the people is a normal and laughable matter. And you know, great timing too, because what would Trump's logical next step be if he were to lose on November 5th?
Give me, I don't know, a man in an apron at a drive-through window thoughtfully considering whether or not to future coup.
Talking to reporters, Trump was asked about accepting the 2024 election results.
Either way, will you accept the results of the election?
Yeah, sure. If it's a fair election, always. I would always accept it if it's got to be a fair election.
Yeah, fat chance that Fatso deems a loss a fair election. Instead, he'll yet again declare the election illegitimate and try to challenge it in the courts. Hopefully, he doesn't resort to trying to hang the president-elect, but with election skepticism critically high among Republicans and people with nefarious motives getting more and more involved in election certification after 2020, and a Supreme Court that is in his pocket because most of them came out of his pocket, it is entirely possible.
It's entirely possible
That Trump will have a legitimate chance of challenging an election loss completely illegitimately. And maybe the only saving grace of this interview, which by the way, 2 years ago, Joe Rogan wouldn't even bring Trump onto his podcast because he said he was a, quote, threat to democracy. But the only saving grace of this interview, where Joe had the chance to actually influence his audience of far-right free thinkers to think for themselves, was this moment where he did not give a straight answer to Donald Trump's incredibly awkward begging for his endorsement.
Could you do me a favor? Do you know Elon Musk? Yes. He endorsed me. By the way, he gave me the nicest endorsement, too. The tougher. He said, the country's going to fail. You should do the same thing, Joe, because you cannot be voting for Kamala. Kamala, you're not a Kamala person. I know you. I've watched you. I know him better than he is. You know what? Without speaking to you, I think I know you maybe almost as well as your wife. I have watched you for so many years. You're not a Kamala person. You're a Khabib person, but you're not a Kamala person.
That is where this interview falls so staggeringly short, by portraying this whole thing as some kind of game, as a popularity contest where it's okay to vote for the fascist, criminal, sexual predator because he's funny and he has good comedic chops.
So one of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like, you get out and you do these huge events and you're just talking. But it's like, and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great.
And Rogan continually disparages some of the most valid critiques about Trump by chalking them up to mere media manipulation and hyperbole.
Oh, it's a creepy, corrupt business, and the media, to a large extent, acts as a propaganda arm for the Democratic Party.
It's not even believable.
Yeah, it's bizarre to watch, and most young people, I think, are aware of it. I think most boomers still, unfortunately, read the newspapers and believe in CNN, and they like the very fine people hoax, the Russiagate hoax, all these different things that they've done, they tried to pin on you. That's like, it's a clear distortion of what you actually said.
The bloodbath hoax.
Yeah, but that's the problem with propagandists, because they take things out of context, and ultimately what they do is they diminish their own credibility because people don't want to listen to them anymore because they see that they've done that and they recognize what's going on and they feel insulted.
The irony is not lost on me, but it is infantilizing, not only to Trump, but to Rogan's audience as well, to coddle these people that maybe feel bad about voting for Trump because he's a terrible person who does terrible things and has terrible policies, and then pat them on the back reassuredly saying, don't worry about it, pal, at least he makes you laugh sometimes.
I lost by I didn't lose, but they say I lost, Joe.
And the last thing I'll say here is to all the folks on the right who decry Democrats and the media for exaggerating Trump's behavior, misinterpreting his very literal threats, and calling out the fact that everything he says is a lie, the fact that that bothers you more than supporting a malignant narcissist, liar, convicted felon, con man, failed businessman, sexual predator, adjudicated rapist, deadbeat dad who wants to sleep with his own daughter, whose plans for the economy are proven to increase your tax burden and the national debt, who called veterans suckers and losers, who rambles incoherently for hours while begging for your money to pay his legal fees, whose only campaign platform is keeping himself out of prison, says a lot more about your character than anyone who's criticizing him. Damn! Thanks for watching, folks. For Really American, I'm Kenny Hesse, and I'll see you in the next one.